nobody wants to hear about African Americans in poverty. And the reaction is, well, you're not in poverty, so why is that your problem? But that's not where I came from. So what happened was, and I fortunately, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of really good training as a scholar, and I could have been as good of a traditional scholar as I wanted to be. I mean, I had all the tools and all the connections and things like that, but I came in and I deliberately said, I'm not a finance professor who happens to be black. I'm a black man who happens to be a finance professor. I want to be a black public financial intellectual. I want to be in the same tradition as Cornel West, as W.E.B. Du Bois, as Michael Eric Dyson, as Julianne Malveaux. And so that's what I did. That's the type of career I pursued. And what gave me the window to do that was the Chancellor's Initiative on Scholarship in Action, where everybody's seen this, and effectively, the mandate was take your research to the world, get out here, get in public debates, et cetera, et cetera. The thing about it, though, was that when they came up with the concept of scholarship in action, they didn't know that how I would use scholarship in action. They didn't know that I was going to use it to actually apply things to race and these issues that can cause so much controversy, so much craziness, so much friction. They didn't know that a couple of years later, Bill O'Reilly would be pressuring their alumni to not give money to the campus, and that they would literally lose $2, $3, $4 million in donations because they have alumni who love Bill O'Reilly who don't want to give money anymore. So that creates an interesting dilemma for Syracuse University, because what has occurred is I have the academic credentials, I have the research publications, I have the record, I have I've done all the things that a scholar would need to do in order to have tenure at Syracuse, but the powers that be have no incentive to want to have someone like me here. The truth of the matter is that my presence it creates controversy. It creates people think about an issue that they really don't want to talk about, which is race, or the black male. That's something that people don't want to talk about. So effectively, it's an interesting situation. And honestly, I kind of knew the consequences of what I was going to do before I did it. So tenure never really meant a whole lot to me, but I felt offended as a person of color that you've allowed hundreds of black scholars to come through and to stay for just 3 or 4 years, and every time they go up for tenure, every time they have been here 3 or 4 years, you tell them they're not good enough to be here. And so when I got my evaluation, so what would happen is, we would on our website for the business school, they would list, when their faculty were quoted in the local paper, or when they were on the local TV network or whatever. That same week, I would have literally been on CNN 3 times that week, and they wouldn't say a word about it. They wouldn't mention it, And it didn't bother me, but it made me say, wow, you don't see that this is a little bit of a problem. And so anyway, so that's kind of the dilemma that I've had to face when it comes to tenure. The way people can help, if they want to do so, is unsolicited letters of support are always helpful. On my website, on boycewatkins.net, you can go in and there's a link, and you can click on it, and you can write up whatever you want to write, and it's a web form, and my assistant can rewrite it and put it into a letter and mail it in for you. So any comments, any support that people can provide is helpful, because to be honest with you, when I get I've gotten letters from people like Jesse Jackson and Cornel West and others who've offered their support as well. But honestly, you're talking about committees filled with people who don't even know who Cornel West is and don't really care to know who Cornel West is. So so the nature of the evaluations I would get would be things like, well, this stuff he's doing in the black community, it's cute, but it's really not that important, because scholars are allowed to make these subjective judgments on what's important and what's not, what's scholarly and what's not. And so what I had to kind of explain to these individuals in the most polite way I possibly could is, that, hey, this environment was not created for people like me. So, it's up to you to decide what side of history you want to be on. But if you look at your history as a campus, every time a black person has come along and really challenged you on issues related to race and helped your campus try to move forward on these issues, you've always spit those people out. You've always attacked and punished those people. So what are we going to do this time now? Because honestly, I will fight you to the end, but at the same time, I don't really feel that I have much at stake here one way or the other. Whatever happens, I'm going to keep on moving. I'm not going to change who I am.
Just before we move on, though, can you be a little bit more specific, though? When and who is going to be making the decision as to whether or not you're qualified for tenure?
Well, there are three. I literally turn in my tenure packet tomorrow, and the decisions being made over the course of the year. At the end of this academic year is when they have to make the decision by the last day of classes in the spring semester. The decision making is done at three levels. There's a tenure committee, a promotion and tenure committee at the faculty level that meets and reads through everything and talks about it. Then it goes up to the dean's office. And then after it goes up to the dean's office, it goes to the chancellor's office on Central Campus. And the Board of Trustees has to ratify the decision that's made, at those levels. Now, each level above the prior level can basically reverse the decision of the lower level. So if the chancellor or the provost, decide that they don't like the decision being made at the lower level, they can just change it if they want to. So that's kind of how the process works.
And how many black professors currently are in the business school?
There are, I want to say 4 of us, maybe 5. None of us have tenure. There's not a single tenured black professor in the business school. But the difference between tenure, what a lot of universities do, and I'm not accusing Syracuse of doing this one way or the other, but a lot of universities, what they'll do is, if you say there should be more black professors, what they'll do is they'll hire lots of adjuncts or hire lots of assistant professors, because assistant professors don't have to stay that long. When you give someone tenure, you've made a commitment to keeping that person and making that person a part of your institutional infrastructure. And so it's really the difference between marrying someone and just dating them. There's a whole different level of commitment there.
Right. And just to put things in perspective, I found something out that was very shocking. There are only supposedly about 164,000 African Americans alive today who have a professional degree, and only around 100,000 African Americans who are alive with a doctoral degree. Now, those numbers to me are pretty stunning. So my question to you is, why is your struggle for tenure important outside of the business school and outside of SU?
Wait, why is the struggle outside?
Yeah, why is your struggle for tenure, or the issue of tenure for black professors, why is that important outside of SU?
Well, it's important outside of SU. You mean in my case, or why is the issue important?
Why is the issue important?
Well, I think the issue is important because it's yet another fight for fairness and equality that we're trying to deal with in America. Universities and the way our youth are taught plays a critical role in the future of our country. You remember a couple of years ago where the Newhouse students, did that. These weren't the black students; these were non-black students who worked for the television network. Remember when they made that really racist television show?
Right.
And they want, and the campus was in an uproar, and they wanted to expel the kids and everything else. I stepped out and said, no, I don't believe that these kids should be punished that severely at all, because it's not their fault. They are 18, 19 years old, and when they do things that are that blatantly racist, that blatantly confused, it's probably, in my opinion, due to the fact that the adults around them have not educated them on how to behave in a socially responsible fashion. So, the reality is that if you have a campus and you have an environment within our universities in which people are not being properly taught diversity, not being properly taught black history, not being properly taught, how to be sensitive to other human beings, then that's what you're going to get, and it's going to permeate throughout our society and not just exist within academia. So tenuring black faculty is something that really has to happen because I don't know about you guys, but I know that my undergraduate experience was to some extent a little extra challenging because I've never in my life ever had a black professor, and I took a lot of grad classes, and I think that there's something wrong with that.